conflicts can be healthy. Certainly there's different types of conflict, but good constructive feedback can be a very healthy form of conflict in any organization and in your personal life.
Welcome to Lessons in Leverage, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of success. We'll help you unlock the secrets of leverage so you can amplify your impact in the world. Here is your host, Spencer Lowe.
Welcome back to another episode of Lessons in Leverage. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different, and I wanted to walk you through it. So I've got some feedback and people saying, hey, we want to hear directly from you. We want you to teach some of the lessons and some of the aspects of the podcast that maybe don't come through always in the interviews. And so I decided that this week we're going to try something new, and I'm going to do a solo episode. I'd love to hear your feedback, whether it's through a review or just sending us a note based on how you think it goes. All right, well, let's start and dive in. Today's subject, we're going to talk a little bit about a really high leverage skill around communication. And a lot of people have heard about this in the past. They've heard of this concept of, some percentage of what I say is going to be the words themselves. It's going to be the body language. It's going to be the tone. And, the exact numbers that get thrown around are actually from a study that was done by Albert Mehrabian. And he did this set of studies that get used all the time now to say 55% of communication is body language, 38% is tone or how you say it, 7% is the words themselves. And the problem is that's not really the whole story about that study. Those studies were looking at comparing when the words that you say conflict with either your tone or your body language, where do people put more value or weight? And the reality is when there's conflict between what you're saying and how you're saying it, people first and foremost give the most weight to your body language, 55%. Then they give a lot of weight to your tone. And then they give weight to the words themselves. So this is a really important distinction and a really important concept for you to understand, because when you're trying to communicate, it's important first and foremost that your communication be congruent, meaning everything lines up. The way your body language is being used, the tone and how you're saying it, and the words themselves. If they all line up, then that's going to be a really powerful message for the person that you're trying to speak to. And so this is something that came up this week in a few coaching conversations I had with some of my leadership. And I was talking to them about different conversations they were having with people that reported to them. And they were trying to give feedback, but they were struggling to really get through and be heard. They felt like they had to keep giving the same feedback over and over again. And when we looked at what was happening, I had a feeling that it was the same problem that gets called out in this study. And what this looks like in your life, and certainly in my life, I end up accidentally making this mistake still to this day. It looks like needing to give feedback or criticism or corrective conversation, but wanting them to like you. And so your body language and your tone, try to be really encouraging. Maybe even say some things with your words, or like, hey, you're so great and I really like you. All before you kind of give them that little piece of feedback that you need to give them. Hey, I need you to do this differently, or this was below standard. And then they leave the conversation, and the emotional experience they had was, well, there were some words that were saying I needed to change, but there was a lot of body language and tone and even some words that said that I'm good and they like me and I'm okay. So that sounds kind of like a suggestion. And maybe they didn't even hear really the feedback at all based on how confusing that message was. So when you need to give feedback and you need to help someone change course, you want to do that in a congruent way. And the problem with this is it feels like conflict to us. It can feel like you're going to do something that hurts their feelings, or, that feels just like conflict. The truth is conflicts can be healthy. Certainly there's different types of conflict, but good constructive feedback can be a very healthy form of conflict in any organization and in your personal life. And the ability to lean into that and do this pattern that I'm going to give you in a second will mean that you have to have less conversations like this in the first place, because you are able to get a good correction right up front and then follow up later and keep on course. As opposed to when you muddy your message, you might have to give that message 10 or 20 times before it gets through. And then as a leader or as a partner, you just feel, frustrated, like it's not getting through, or why aren't they listening to me? Truth is, it's in the delivery. So how do you avoid this problem, and how do you be really clear about your communication? The first aspect is, before you go talk to the person that you're going to give feedback to, I want you to write down what's called a problem statement. And I got this from Ernie Nielsen, who's one of the best project management minds out there. And he developed this from needing to have influence over people on a project where you don't have any actual authority over them. So you can't just use authority. You have to actually kind of influence them to change. And so this structure of a problem sentence or a problem statement goes first, what was expected, and second, what was observed. And you want to make sure when you write it down that there's no extra emotions around it. There's no meaning assigned to it. We have this tendency to think we have to assign meaning or threaten or do these other things in order to get our message across. But really, if we're super clear, we can just say what was expected and what was observed. So let's say you've got a coworker and that coworker didn't perform at the level they were supposed to perform at. If you want to be clear, you need to have a problem statement that says, I expected you to perform at this level or in this way. Your performance appeared to be this, or I saw this. And then you shut up and you say nothing. Silence is a really important part of this process because you took the time to prepare this problem statement and think about the problem. They're being confronted with this fresh. And because you did a good job of not muddying the message, it's going to hit with some real impact, which is what you want. You want it to hit and have them go, oh, I need to change here. Not, oh, I'm bad or they're mad at me or anything. So there's no emotion in it. It's not, you really screwed up or you're so bad or, I'm right, you're wrong. There's none of that in there. It's just, I was expecting this to happen. I was expecting you to perform at this level. It looks like your performance was at this level. And then quiet. And that gap tells the whole story by itself. And so now the person who you're speaking with, they're able to sit and think about that for a second while you're silent to go, yeah, why is there that gap? And they're going to respond in one of a few ways. They're going to say, okay, well, I didn't think that was the expectation. So now you're going to learn, oh, you had never set a good enough expectation or they had never understood the expectation. And that's what led to this breakdown. Now we can solve that problem. Or they're going to say, yeah, I knew that was the expectation, but here's why I wasn't able to meet that expectation. And now you know how to actually support them and work through whatever the barrier was. Usually it's just a motivation issue and they either didn't prioritize it or didn't understand it or got stuck somewhere, didn't know what action to take. There's all these things that then you can work with them on fixing that so that they can meet the expectation going forward. But most importantly, the experience of this is going to be one that's clear. So they know that there was an expectation, they know they didn't meet it, and now they see a path to correcting that going forward. Now, after you've been silent, they're going to give you their response. You listen closely to understand their perception of was it an expectation issue or was it a motivation issue on actually delivering on what they were supposed to do. How do we make a plan to make sure that doesn't happen anymore in the future? That's not you dictating to them. Again, having a conversation with them, ask them the question, all right, how could we make sure that doesn't happen that next time? How could I support you better? What would you need in order to make sure you can meet this expectation going forward? Really be productive and let them be a part of it so that they can take ownership of the outcome. And then once you get a decision made, all right, this is how we're going to do this going forward or next time, then you can set that decision and set a date to follow up on it. So now you can say, all right, great. I'm going to follow up with you on XYZ date in this way. Does that work for you? Like, are you comfortable if I follow up with you at this date and time in this way to make sure that this happens? And all you're doing with that is showing this really matters. And so on top of giving you the feedback, I'm going to be following up to make sure the behavior changes. And so that's the whole process. There's more to it. We could spend more time getting into some of the nuances, but what really matters out of this, when I teach this to people that are in my companies, what really matters is that you're not confusing the person on the other side with mixed messages. They know that something was incorrect and that there's something that they need to do to fix it, and they have a plan to fix it, and they know you're going to follow up on it, and then you do, and that all builds trust. And none of that needs to mean that they're a bad person or that they're, in trouble or whatever. It feels like conflict and it feels a little uncomfortable when you're doing it for the first time. But as you get more comfortable with it, you realize that it actually builds trust and it actually helps people to feel like they know what you expect from them. And then if you want to make sure that they know how much you appreciate them, separate from that conversation, come back and congratulate them on all the things they're doing well. Provide all that positive feedback you wanted to provide. Tell them how much you value the relationship. Still do all those things, but don't do it at the same time. Don't start with all those things and then hit them with a little bit of feedback and then hope that they got the message, because it's just confusing. And it ends up undermining your message, and you will see that you get so much better results with clarity of feedback, clear expectation, clearly what you observed, clear plan to resolve it once they speak back, and a clear follow-up plan. You're going to get behavior changing much faster, and that is going to allow you to get the results you want. And when you get the results you want, everybody's happier. That's going to help the other person get the results they want. And so that builds real trust and real performance and success. So that was one little tactic that I wanted to share with you. These solo podcasts, as I do them, I'm considering doing maybe one a month or possibly one even a week if I get a lot of positive feedback on this. And I'm going to pull them from the coaching that I do with my executive teams and with people one-on-one. They're all skills that are going to be in the courses of Lessons in Leverage. And so I want to just take down the little micro skills and be able to give them to you throughout the podcast so that you can implement them and get more leverage in your life. So if you found this really helpful, please give me feedback so that I can plan how often I want to do these solo episodes going forward.
Hey, before you go, I have a small request. Our mission is to empower as many people as possible to maximize their potential through the power of leverage. Could you help us in this mission by leaving a review on iTunes, Spotify, or YouTube? And if you know just one person who would benefit from today's episode, would you please share it with them? Your support means the world to us, and we are thrilled to have you in the community. Thank you for being a part of our journey and helping us grow. You can find show notes for today's show and past shows at lessonsinleverage.com, which also has links to connect with me personally and connect with our various podcast channels across your favorite social networks. A big thanks to Solve.cloud, who sponsored this episode. They're a group of expert consultants that help SaaS and financial services companies to implement, optimize, and manage Salesforce.com. They can help you with custom integration solutions and are helping customers to implement some of the most important generative AI technologies. You can find them at solved.cloud. That's SOLVD.cloud is the URL. Thanks again, and we'll talk soon.